All right, welcome in everyone. It is Monday. Full Court Press is back after the holiday break. Rob Vino. Hope everyone had a good holiday. College basketball gets a little bit of a break over Christmas now, especially now that the Diamond Head Classic is no more. So that used to be a nice little kind of standalone event on Christmas. They've done away with it. And what that means is it's dark for like 4 days, but we come back over the weekend. Yesterday was the first really slate of games since Tuesday. And then Rob, I was just talking to you off camera. This is a great Monday slate. There's way more games today than I kind of anticipated, and we're here to break them down.
Yeah, some conference seasons kick in. Got some strange non-conference matchups. But certainly it's extensive, Adam. I mean, the extra board is absolutely loaded on top of the regular board. So everybody trying to get their New Year's Eve games in before New Year's Eve so these kids can party a little bit.
Yeah, for me, the focus from this point forward will be on conference play. I always find like this week, if you're still playing non-conference games, you're usually like the Minnesota Fairleigh Dickinson games hit today, where it's like kind of a tune-up. It maybe just didn't fit in your schedule. You'll see some like that, like Dartmouth, Florida. Those are like tune-up games for conference play. So I tend to stay away from the non-con in like this week because I'm trying to figure out who's focused, who's not focused. But there is a very intriguing one today that I've decided to make our feature game, and that is because Yale is historically good this season. They're 11-1. They probably are kicking themselves. They probably think that they could or should be 12-0. Their one loss was to Rhode Island in a game that they were a pretty big favorite in. But nonetheless, Yale's 11-1, and they come in with an opportunity here where if they were to win this game, even in today's NCAA landscape, where they want to do everything imaginable to make sure that a team like Yale has to win their conference tournament to get in. Rob, if they somehow pulled the upset here, I think you'd have to consider them. I think they'd have to have a real case at an at-large bid. But easier said than done, right? 17-point spread, Yale, Alabama. Do you think the Bulldogs have any shot tonight?
Well, I think under James Jones, you always give them a shot. I mean, we've seen them in NCAA tournament action, in some non-conference action, be very competitive against teams that maybe they weren't expected to be competitive. I think this game's a little bit funny, Adam, because generally when I handicap a game and feel like one team can make the other team uncomfortable, it's because they're either really good defensively or because they slow down the tempo. And here, I don't think Yale can make Alabama's offense uncomfortable at all. I don't think they do anything that's going to make Alabama's offense not run high octane the way it always does. Where they make Alabama uncomfortable, I think, is in their shot making and their ability to, keep pace. Alabama, we've seen Nate Oates a couple of times this year call out his team for lack of defensive effort, for lack of rebounding effort. Yale certainly, albeit against a much, much lighter schedule. I have Alabama's strength of schedule here rated as toughest in the country up to this point. Yale, not quite that. In fact, the only comp game I found for Alabama stylistically was the Akron game, which Yale won 97-94, which shows you that Yale will go with a 94-foot basketball team. They'll make their shots. You'll probably make theirs. I kind of see this thing the same way. Alabama's not going to be denied on the scoreboard, but I think even though Yale has to at this point, they have to come with somewhat of a reputation as being a pretty good mid-major. But when this team shows up in Alabama, I don't know if the Alabama players see it that way. They just think they're going to steamroll Yale. And then you get involved in the game and Yale's sinking threes and Yale's getting to the rim. And all of a sudden you're in a high-scoring, tough game. So total here, 175 and a half, probably appropriate for this contest. Could get above that number. We do see some money, and we often say on this show, the hour that we do this show, between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern time, we see line movement, and we're seeing it right now. as we speak, as Alabama's been bet down from 17 to only 16.5-point favorites. I can see it. I would probably prefer to be on the total in some way, shape, or form. It would not surprise me if Yale was able to get to 80 points here. Their team total is 79.5. Wouldn't surprise me, since Akron got to 94, that Alabama could get to 96. I think I wouldn't want to exclude either team from this total. So I think my lean, and I haven't played it, and I may not play it at all, but I think my lean would be towards over here. I just think Alabama is going to be somewhat shocked. No matter what Nate Oates might tell his team, I think they're going to be somewhat shocked at how Yale can score the basketball. I don't think Alabama does enough defensively to stop them from doing that.
Yeah, what ultimately I think is going to keep me off of this game. So first, just from a betting standpoint, my number came out about where this opened. I was at 17, so 17.5. I didn't see like a huge numerical edge on the number. Rob, if someone's gonna, I want to make a case for like an Ivy League team against a team like Alabama, and I've had good luck playing Yale in spots like this over the years. Makes me think of that Auburn game in the NCAA tournament where they came out and won. But the concern I have for Yale is this, and I someone in the chat, our chat, smartest chat in any of these shows, I'll watch some of them. What our competitors do. I think our chat is the smartest in terms of like what someone's all over it. Yale hasn't been on the road since November 11th. Okay, a true road game. They played a tournament, but a true road game since November 11th. And the two road games they did play were Navy and Quinnipiac. Now, Quinnipiac's barely a road game for Yale. It's a quick Connecticut trip, Rob, as you know very well. And also in that game, Amari Monroe kind of like didn't play his full minutes. I feel like he was, if you go back to like that early in the season, of course, Amari Monroe, Quinnipiac, big man, one of the best players in the MAC conference. They were lucky to keep him. He kind of battled an injury at times during November. So I went back and looked. Yale won that game by 37. He only played like 19 minutes. Wasn't a huge factor. You brought up the Akron game. That was a weird game because it was part of an MTE and it was the last day of the MTE. So it's like 97-94, but one of those games where, you start to play 3 games and I think that was a 3-game and 4-day type setup where it's just like, the last day is kind of a free for all. So while the win over Akron is a really nice win on paper, I have to take it with a grain of salt because of that. The other thing that, for me, I've talked about this a couple of times. Like Rhode Island's not a very good team in the A10. Like I thought that they regressed from last year to this year in terms of like, they lost David Green to Tulsa. I played against them a couple of times with like far inferior teams. I had an easy cover a couple of weeks ago with Canisius against Rhode Island. So, that's an outright home loss for Yale as a 9-point favorite. They've done well against what's been put in front of them so far this year, but they've seen nothing like Alabama yet. And all that, I think the whole handicap here is this, Rob. How much is Alabama looking ahead to Kentucky this weekend? Because if they show up here, could very easily be a 20-point blowout. And there, Nate Oates, I can't imagine he's like overly thrilled with how his team has played in some of these games of late. They really kind of went through the motions last week against Kennesaw. Like that wasn't like a banner performance for them. Even the South Florida game, to give up 93 to South Florida, like been giving up a lot of points lately. And you just have to wonder, like, they've had a week off. Does Nate Oates have his team focused? And if they are, 20 points is not that out of the realm of possibility. So I pump the brakes. I a very slight lean toward Yale, but I just don't think I'm going to get there with that one.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of reasons that you listen. And I'll say one more thing about Yale. At this point in time, I don't think Yale's ever intimidated by venue. Maybe the first road game in a while, but Yale's not one of these teams that's going to go into Alabama and actually be in awe of the surroundings. They go. James Jones coaches that team so well. So I don't know that the road means a lot here. I just think both teams should score here. And of course, the strength of schedule difference that we pointed out multiple times here is huge. And will Alabama's players listen to Nate Oates' warnings about Yale? Sometimes they just don't feel like they need to be warned about teams, and Yale's good at sneaking up on people. I think this one probably gets over the total of 175.5.
Yeah, I was sitting here I was kind of hoping it would move in the other direction. Maybe Alabama would take some money. I think had this gotten up to like 19, I probably would have clicked Yale. But it's right there. I think the books did a good job. I think that's where the number should be. I wouldn't be surprised to see Yale competitive for long stretches, and even if they are still sweating out that 15, 16 right at the end. If Alabama can land the knockout punch. But I hope for the Ivy and the small conferences in the Northeast, it would be awesome to see Yale compete in this game. All right, let's bring Garth in here. He says thoughts on Cal Baptist, Utah Valley. He's leading Cal Bap plus 6.5. And so conference play here, the WAC. Rob, I'm actually very, very interested in this WAC conference play this year. And the reason for that is there's only 7 teams. So if you haven't followed along at home, the WAC is going to dissolve after this year. I believe Cal Baptist will join the Big West. And then some of these other football schools in the WAC are going places like, I believe they're going to make something called the UAC, which they've already done in college football, where it's like a handful of teams from the WAC. And it's like the football schools that are still in like the Atlantic Sun. Very odd. It's like geographically, they're going to get a lot of travel in this conference probably when Austin P is playing like Southern Utah or something like that. But that's what their football, as we know, rules everything. And that's what they're looking to go to next year. So because of this transition year, we've got a 7-team WAC. They will get an auto bid to the NCAA tournament. And the cool thing about this is, they're pretty evenly matched. I think the teams outside of maybe Utah Valley being the clear favorite, but the teams are pretty evenly matched. And some of these conference matchups you're going to see 3 times. So that's going to be an interesting wrinkle that you probably haven't seen much before, is that you're going to get 3 meetings for a lot of these conference games. This one's interesting to me, Rob, because I'm with Garth in the respect that I thought that number was awfully high when it came out. Cal Baptist is really good, but the matchup to me kind of I lean toward Utah Valley on the matchup because Dom Daniels is the guy for Cal Baptist, and when he can sort of do what he wants, get to the rim, take guys off the dribble, that Cal Baptist team is really good. It is going to be difficult to do that against Utah Valley. They've got size, and they can defend him in that respect. So I guess when I wrapped up my handicap here, I was like, well, number-wise, Cal Baptist makes a lot of sense. But this is not the worst matchup for Utah Valley, and I wouldn't be that surprised if the Wolverines pulled away. What are you thinking about Cal Baptist, Utah Valley? Anything on Garth's side play? And do you have anything on the total here?
Yeah, a couple of things. Certainly, both teams are anchored in defense. I think there's a slight, not even a slight, there's a pretty sizable advantage offensively toward the Utah Valley side. The one thing that I noticed, Adam, when you go through all the analytics here, is the turnover problems that Utah Valley has had this season. And if those could be created by Cal Baptist, you're probably getting extra possessions and you're even closer to staying within the number. Obviously, money has taken the better part of this underdog price away from us. +9 down to +6.5 already.
Yeah.
You've chewed up 8.5, 8, 7.5, 7, all the way down to 6.5. So that's not great. My initial lean here when I looked at it at first was toward total, which it always is. And I thought 2 defensive-minded teams in a conference game, probably somewhat under. That's also been played a little bit here, 146.5 down to 144. There's no real edges where size is concerned, where I think athleticism is concerned. I think they're both kind of somewhat equal in that respect. However, I would say that Utah State, just based on the way they performed, or Utah Valley, the way that they've performed offensively this year, it's just a drastic difference, and it's not an easy road trip. When you're Cal Baptist, now you got to go up and play in some altitude in Orem, Utah. That's never an easy thing. You can get worn down by the end of the game. So a lot of things in favor of Utah Valley. What's not in their favor here, if you're going to play them as a favorite of this size, is their free throw shooting. Hasn't been great this season. So, you miss a couple front ends of 1-on-1s, the other team can stay within the number. If I had my choice, I probably would have played Baptist at the larger price. I don't think I could play him at this price, but I still think under has room. 144.5 to me seems fairly high in a game which I expect the defenses to be the best units on the floor. So, and Utah Valley, real quick, for what it's worth, in some of these games this season, defensively, they've shown up tenacious, and I would be very, very surprised if that wasn't the case here again tonight. So even if they win by margin, that means Cal Baptist hasn't probably gotten beyond 60. And I think under is still a solid play at 144.5.
Yeah, listen, both of these teams are really good defensive teams. Both teams can rebound. Like, you're looking at it. So just going back to like where this opened at 9.5, that was shocking to me because I feel like these are probably the two best teams in this league. Now, teams like Tarleton, Arlington, Abilene, they're not that far off from these guys, but like it was a little bit shocking to me to see the opener of 9.5. With that being said, I think where it's at now, I think I would lean toward playing Utah Valley minus 6.5 because I agree that the number was off, but my everything about my handicap suggests that Utah Valley probably pulls away in this game. So the thing to me is like you go back to like, yes, both teams scrappy, both teams very good defensively, both teams can rebound, but Utah Valley 6-0 at home. They tend to play really great in this gym. And then the ease of which their offense flows is much easier than Cal Baptist, right? Like they're a great Utah Valley this year, Rob, 13th in the country, 52% from the field. Yeah. They generate really good looks from 3, from 2. They can get to the rim. Their size plays on both ends of the floor. And then like I've mentioned this a couple of times now. It has only come up once this year, and it was not injury related. Dom Daniels got suspended for a game against San Diego, and now they won that game, but they looked horrific for most of the first half, and then San Diego went like 10 minutes in the second half without scoring a single point. That had far more to do with San Diego just having just horrific shot selection, not being able to make a shot, than it did like Cal Baptist being able to play without Daniels. Now, they're going to have Daniels here, but the reason I bring that up is because in past years, if you've been able to, well, when he hasn't played, this Baptist team has been a mess. And if you can take him out of the game, and it's really him and like Daniels and Martell Williams are the two guys that generate the majority of the offense for this Cal Baptist team. If you can cut those guys out in any capacity, you're going to have a pretty good chance to beat Cal Baptist. And I think Utah Valley is not only are they equipped to do that, but then you throw in the fact where they rarely lose on this floor. This isn't just this year. Go back. You talked about the trip to Orem being a tough one, but like they have a really good track record in this gym. And now the market, I think, has over-adjusted. 6.5 being way too low, in my opinion. I think at the current number, I could only look Utah Valley. But listen, Daniels he's arguably the best player in this league. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone's going to overcome a tough matchup, it's probably going to be him, and makes it a definitely a great watch. I don't think I can get involved there because there's just too many. There's just again shocking to see that number where it was at the open.
Real quick here, Adam, just one last thing about playing in Utah, about playing in altitude, et cetera, et cetera. Cal Baptist has been in altitude in this state, or in Colorado and Utah, 3 times already. Those 3 times the shooting of Cal Baptist was horrendous, especially from beyond the arc. 2 of 13 against Colorado, 6 of 23 against BYU, lose by 31. And then against Utah, 7 of 21. Now, the Colorado and Utah games, true road games, true altitude. and they played them to within 6 and 8. I'm kind of with you where I feel like this is a conference matchup, so I can't completely equate a non-conference game with Utah and Colorado to what the atmosphere is going to be like here tonight. But if you lose by 6 and 8 there, you can lose by 7 here tonight in this particular matchup, especially if you bring lousy shooting to the floor, which, as we mentioned, there's a significant edge in how these teams shoot the basketball toward Utah Valley.
Fixer, I'm going to hit both of your. So Fixer's got a game. I'm going to go to it next. But I also told the bosses I would actually promote the site more on the show going forward. I don't do it nearly enough. It's we got to pay the bills somehow. Fixer says, Trig, that 5% San Fran -3 NFL hit. Yes, it did. And Rob, I just the luck I have in football compared to the luck I've had in basketball this year, it's like, I mean, Caleb Williams is down at the goal line. There was never any doubt in my mind I was getting a stop there with 4 seconds left. Yet I'll find ways to lose every basketball game by a half point. I had Portland +4.5 yesterday. Gave up a breakaway layup with 9 seconds left to lose by 5. So, that's the type of stuff that's happened. This is a roundabout way to promo. Listen, we've got a great year coupon. And this is the kind of stuff that, like, over the course of the year, over the course of every pick, in my opinion, like, that's how you should be playing with a handicapper. Like, I know I've pissed some people off with, like, bad hoop results, but then, I think I have to go re-look in our back end. I might be number 1 in the NFL after yesterday. I went 2-0. The point is, WagerTalk gives you a great option to get the year at, like, a very, very low rate every single play. I feel like that's how you kind of got to judge someone, Rob. Got to up and down, ebbs and flows. Then it's like, you can truly say, like, okay, this person helped me out, this person didn't. It's on both of our pages right now, and I think it's up for the rest of the year, which year's almost done. New Year's Eve is Wednesday, so it's like $500 off, and I wanted to point that out. Myself or Rob does a million sports. Are you having that issue at all, where it's just like one is going extremely well and something else isn't at this point?
Yeah, and I think it happens season to season. And people often ask me, what's your favorite sport? Well, I tell them it's college football. And it doesn't necessarily mean that college football is going to be your best betting sport every single year. It just varies from year to year. Some years, the good results come from the NBA and the NFL. Some years they come from college football and college basketball. Right now, what's great for me is NFL and college basketball. And that's what's doing the job here, providing positive results. So it is funny you say that, because there's no better feeling than knowing that in a clutch moment, it's going to go your way. You just know. The opposite of that is miserable, when you're just going to get beat somehow. But that's good stuff for the NFL. And like you, NFL's been very, very kind to me. Another great day yesterday in NFL action. So I'm amongst the top 3 in that sport as well.
Yeah, and when you're doing it like that, really, they all cash the same. Like, listen, I'll take a 5% NFL win over a 3% college basketball win any day of the week. But I understand the frustration if you're trying to just, grab like one sport and they're struggling in said sport, which is what I've done so far this year in college hoop. But that's why we're here every day, just chipping away, trying to make adjustments, trying to turn it around. And we will. Very confident that there will probably come a point in time where where the luck happens in the other one, and then you're giving up that goal line touchdown in football. It's just how it goes. Fixer, I didn't mean to turn your question into like a 3-minute like promotion, so I apologize for that. Let's get back to it. Fixer says Merrimack underdogs versus Sacred Heart. Why? Well, that's what's interesting about question or about your game, the one that you're bringing up, is I've got question marks all over this game. And the reason is it is very difficult to figure out who is going to show up and play for Sacred Heart. This has been a thing with Anthony Latina has been at Sacred Heart for over a decade. I followed this team closely, Rob, when they were still part of the NEC. They're now in the MAC. And it's almost like every December, his teams have like 3 or 4 guys out. I don't know what it is. I don't know what you guys have in the water out there in Fairfield, Connecticut. But like we get to mid-December with Sacred Heart every year. They're missing like 3 key guys, and some of them just like randomly don't play. Now, I'll point out their last game, most recent game was against Towson, and they got blasted. And I think they played with 7 guys, which is not like Anthony Latina's teams are usually pretty deep. They're typically going to go 10 deep. That was like my thing coming into this year with Sacred Heart was I love their depth. So I'm not interested at Sacred Heart at all if they're not, if they don't have their usual depth. And in the Towson game, Rob, which they lost by 25 points in their most recent game, no Anquan Hill. He's now been out for a couple of games. That's a really big deal. He's probably their best inside scorer, might be the best scorer on the team. They've had guys like Jan Farrell didn't play against Towson. That was a new one because he had played the Dartmouth game we talked about on this show, Kids Day. Sacred Heart won that game. Farrell randomly didn't play against Towson. So, you start to take a couple guys like that out of the mix, and suddenly, this team, because the Sacred Heart team to me becomes less appealing. Now, the appeal for Sacred Heart against Merrimack is the fact that they can shoot it a little bit, and you kind of have to shoot to beat Merrimack's zone. But Rob, both of these teams came from the NEC. Joe Gallo, Anthony Latina might know each other as good as any 2 coaches in the country that haven't been in the same league forever, right? Like they both came into the MAC. They've been coaching against each other for years. So like typically this game like goes down to the wire. I'm not that surprised at where the number is, even though I make Sacred Heart a bigger favorite on their home court, knowing that they might show up without Anquan Hill makes me think Merrimack shouldn't be a dog either. So another one, a lot of questions, couldn't find a way in. How are you looking at this one, Merrimack Sacred Heart?
Yeah, well, I think the personnel problems, there are question marks that you point out well taken. And obviously it makes it difficult to handicap a game when you don't know who's going to show who isn't. I know we've talked about the flu running through locker rooms across the country, and you just don't get the quality of injury update reports from these low major schools that you would from, let's just say, a professional league. Although the NBA is tough too. They don't let me know until 10 minutes before tip, but it's hard to handicap that way. It's obviously a contrast in styles. Merrimack's defense certainly makes up for their lack of offense. Their slow pace probably, bothers Sacred Heart a little bit. But I will say, Adam, that game that you just talked about, the 11 o'clock Kids Day where we're all, screaming for anything but the game. That blowout of Dartmouth was kind of unexpected that day. Dartmouth, I believe, was taking money in that game, and they got destroyed by the Sacred Heart offense. So I would have a hard time playing against Sacred Heart here in this gym off of the loss to Towson, which is no shame in that loss. But Towson's another strictly defensive-minded team and slow-paced team like Merrimack, which would make me a little leery of playing Sacred Heart here as well. It could be the particular style and tempo that they don't perform well against. That profile seemed to work last game. We'll see if it works here.
Yeah, and don't listen. There's been about a week now. Like, don't be surprised if Sacred Heart shows up with all their guys here. Like that happened. Trevor in the chat says Jan Farrell is active for Sacred Heart today. Like, he's not the one. Unfortunately, he's not the one that moves the needle for me. Like Anquan Hill being in is the one I would really want to know about. But like I was at a Sacred Heart game like 2 years ago, and I had media. I was able to get in there early, and Tanner Thomas was the best player on the team at the time. He's now at Loyola Marymount. And no one knew he was playing until he straight up just walked out of the locker room like 10 minutes before the game and was like, yeah, I'm playing. Like it was like completely unknown to even some of the guys on the staff that day. So it's like one of those things where for whatever reason, they've been really weird with injuries and then like guys playing. I've also the other side of the coin, same guy. Tanner Thomas used to be the biggest offender of this at Sacred Heart, where like he randomly just didn't play a game. I think it was like Holy Cross a couple of years ago. Never a word about it. He was there, warmed up, just didn't play. So like, big difference here. For me, a fully healthy Sacred Heart team, I have the number here, right here in my notes. If Sacred Heart's fully healthy, I make them minus 3.5 here. I would take pick or -1 all day if I knew that they had their full complement of players, and unfortunately, I just don't know. So I'll lean Sacred Heart, but that's the key there. And even if they're fully healthy, Joe Gallo knows that team as good as anyone. And don't sleep on Merrimack just because they don't have Bud Clark anymore. They've figured out how to work around it. They're a team that I think is much better than I thought they were going to be with some of the guys they lost this year. That's a day game. So we got one of the early tips in. That's a 3:00 tip out your way, Rob. Fairfield.
Yeah, and one last thing on that, Adam. I don't know how much this means, but you and I mean, I'm more mid-Atlantic, you're Northeast. But these bus trips from Massachusetts to Connecticut in the weather that we had last night that we're having today sometimes aren't easy bus rides. And sometimes that throws the team off a little bit too. I mean, it's outside the box. Obviously, it's not something you can put in into the handicap unless you truly know bus broke down, team took 8 hours to get there. But they're just not the easiest trips at this time of year. Weather's been brutal here. Andover, Mass to Fairfield, just off the top of my head, probably somewhere in the 3 hours bus ride type thing, maybe a little more. So we'll see if that plays a part here. But I think if something had really happened, you'd have seen it in the line. And real quick, one last thing I wanted to mention was, as we were talking, the game we previously talked about went back up to 7.5, the Cal Baptist game. So that line is bouncing a little bit now. There's been take back on the Utah Valley side.
Yeah, it's great points too, and like also, it's something you want to know, because like if you're going to bus to the game, which many of these small Northeast conferences, like I think that's something that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't realize is like pretty much if you're in one of the smaller Northeast conferences and you're playing in the Northeast, it's always going to be a bus trip. Not 100 times out of 100. No one is flying anywhere in the Northeast. It's always going to be a bus trip. My driveway and road is a sheet of ice right now. And if that bus is late, it usually means no shoot around, right? Like it usually means you miss your pregame sort of like walkthrough. You get the quick warm up. They'll put the 30 minutes on the clock and you'll get the quick like layup line stuff. But it's worth noting. I definitely think it's probably worth at least a point toward the home team, and it's a very good point right there, Rob. I'm glad you brought
it's a compounded, Adam. It's a 2:00 in the afternoon game.
Yes,
right? It's not like it's a 7 at night game where you've got extra time to, this is quick. So we'll see.
All right, Mad Max, thank you for the donation, and thank you guys for tuning in, donating, like, subscribes. We appreciate all of it. This is the first year that we've done this show. We've tinkered with formats, and we're trying to bring you a good college basketball show 5 days a week where we sort of deep dive the games that you guys want to talk about. Great way to get your game up is if you attach any sort of donation to it, it comes up in this nice UNC Wilmington-esque, Coastal Carolina-esque teal color, Rob, and I can see it. So I click on it and we make sure we get it up here and then go sort of deep into your game. That's something I think some of these other shows don't do quite as much. So Mad Max, thank you for the donation. Thank you guys for the likes, subscribes, retweets. How anything helps, and we very much appreciate it. And we'll get into so another interesting sort of SE. I've noticed this is like a theme of today. In addition to league play, it's SEC playing their quote unquote tune-up game ahead of league play, like starting back up or starting this weekend. So you've got this in a couple of different scenarios today. And this is one of them where, you've got the other end of the spectrum where there's a couple of just like layup type games. I think Texas A&M is playing a team that they're probably going to blow out. And then you've got Alabama who maybe is in a tougher game that they would have hoped for with Yale. This is kind of the one where it's like, okay, Arkansas is getting a James Madison team. Mad Max makes a great point. JMU has fallen, precipitous drop from where I think everyone expected them to be this year. They lost to Georgia Southern. They're now outside, I believe, KenPom's top 200. Arkansas coming off the loss to Houston. No real shame in that. I mean, there's no shame in losing that game. But you've got a scenario now where I guess this would be a bounce back spot for Arkansas coming off the Houston loss, but they also have Tennessee at home on Saturday. So my gut says it's probably a little bit more of like a sandwich type look ahead than a bounce back spot against a James Madison team that maybe they haven't been the sort of Sunbelt power that we've expected them to be this point. But like this goes back to Rob, it's almost like reset time. Teams just went home for a week. Now you're coming out conference play. You're coming out of the break. I tend to bump teams like James Madison, who maybe struggled a little bit in November and December, but I know that they're a pretty good team. Like I like to come back with these teams around this time of year. So James Madison, Arkansas, intriguing matchup. Do you have anything for us on this one?
Yeah, these are tough, like you say, Adam, because you can stand on two sides of the fence and throw arguments back and forth. To me, the Arkansas loss to Houston was interesting, right? They get behind in that game by like 20 points in the first half. Houston's destroying them. And yet Arkansas is still able to go out there and score 85 points. Houston doesn't want to get involved in 94 to 85, but Arkansas kind of dictated that they were going to get involved in 94 to 85, and Arkansas made their way back. They didn't hang their heads, down 21. As I look here real quick, that score exactly was 40 to 19 at one point, Houston, and Arkansas made their way back. I think the other really good point you made that I should have brought up at the top of the show is there is a lot of time gap between games for these teams. And the age-old question, rest versus rust, you really just don't know if rest is helpful to a team, if they're going to come out rusty in the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. When you're laying 24 and a half, you certainly hope your team doesn't come out rusty. But I would think Calipari, just knowing his history and knowing his way of, basically preaching to his team, I would think they'll be ready for this. I think he wants to go into the SEC opener on a high note. It doesn't mean you win by 25. You could win by 22, and that's the same type of high note. But I think they'll be ready. I looked at their team total, thinking that perhaps they could, James Madison doesn't necessarily want to go quick. Arkansas is going to force them to go quick. If you can force Houston to go quick, you force anybody to go quick. So I looked at their team total. It was 92 and a half, just a little too high for me. It was the only thing in that game that I considered at all was the Arkansas team total. But for me, it'll be a no play just because I think it's a shade probably too high. If I had to lean, I would say I think if I had, to throw somebody's $20 around, I'd probably throw it on Arkansas team total over, but I'm not quite speaking with real conviction on that play.
Yeah, it's opener was like 21 and a half. I think this went up to 24, maybe even 25 some places. Now kind of back in that 24 and a half range. I would say at majority of spots, which I think that might be a tough number for Arkansas to cover. Like that's an awfully big number in my opinion. But man, for James Madison, the game this weekend at Arkansas State is so much more important than this one.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, they come off that's something I think plays in this week a little bit. Like if James Madison has guys that are even remotely on the fence, I bet they don't even although I don't know, are they going back to Arkansas for a second? I doubt they're staying all week. This is probably just a really poor sort of scheduling scenario where, you got to take, if Arkansas is going to have you down to cut you a check, you have to take it when you can get it. My guess is James Madison is coming down to Arkansas, going back home for the week, and then heading back to Arkansas where they play a league game in Jonesboro on Saturday. Point is, if there's guys on the fence, they're probably not even going to travel to this game. This is a James Madison team that started 0-2 in Sun Belt play. That game Saturday is massive for them. So it's this is a scenario where if this game was early November, Rob, I think James Madison is real fired up to come in and play Arkansas, potentially pull a huge upset. Here, I think this is more let's get some reps in for Saturday, because that is a much bigger game. And so because of that, I'm kind of I don't know that I want to take all these points, even though on numerically, I think there's a little bit of value with James Madison at the current number of 24 and a half, but I'm kind of with you. It's very similar to Alabama, Yale, in my opinion, where it's if you get a fully focused Arkansas team here, probably going to win by 30. if they win by 25, you're covering. I feel the same way about Alabama. If you get fully focused Bama, they're going to come out and win by 20. Like, that's just what's going to happen, in my opinion. So, I guess the very roundabout answer to Mad Max's question, I'll go with Rob. Rob thinks it could be a little bit of a bounce back for Arkansas, kind of focus before conference play. And I'll just say, if it is, they're probably covering. They're probably going to cover this number. Any sort of focus here, I think Arkansas will either cover the number, and if they do, would that go hand in hand with their team total, Rob? Like, if they cover, they're probably going over their team total.
Yeah, I think it has to. And if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably just go team total, because you can still win that game 93-70 and not get the cover, but get the team total. So at that price tag, if I had my choice, I'd probably go Arkansas team total. Again, if you can force tempo against Houston, boy, you can force it against anybody. And I think Calipari probably wants to get into conference play. I'm certain he doesn't want to go in off a bad performance.
All right, let's go to Garth here. This was one that I'm super interested in this game, because here you want to talk about another big early move that didn't make any sense to me. New Orleans, UT, Rio Grande Valley. So he says he likes the team total over on the New Orleans side. And I guess I'll leave the team total part for you. What I didn't understand was why New Orleans took the money that they took this morning, knocking this down from, I think, 6 to like 3.5. I'm very tempted to play back at that move. The only reason I haven't yet is with these smaller conference like Southland teams, you have to worry about like injuries and stuff. But I'll go back to the thing I've said a couple of times, where it's like UTRGV, I think, would have to have like a number of guys out to make me worried about injuries in a conference game. Like, I don't think they have that type of injury concern coming into this game. Rob, I think I may have missed the boat on this one. I think this was what we like to call a little head fake. I think New Orleans got slammed overnight. This was 3.5 UTRGV when I got out right before I logged in to do this show with you. It's now back up to 5.5. So to me, like, I didn't agree with the move at all. I would love to have UTRGV at home here, Southland Conference game -3.5. I personally still think New Orleans is a little bit overvalued from some of their like huge non-conference results that they had. Of course, the win over TCU. Believe they played Memphis tough. There was someone else that they either beat or took to the wire. Maybe Mississippi State in non-conference play. I would have to side with the home team here. Man, I'm kicking myself. I wish I just did. When that got bet down, I should have laid the 3.5, because my number's like much closer to where this opened. I'll find it on my notes, but I think I was at like 6.5 here with the Vaqueros at home. So even if there's still fives out there, FanDuel's got 4.5 -120. I lean with the home team here, and I'll leave the team total part to you. But yeah, I wish I bought that dip, because it just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, this one's difficult, Garth, for me. Trying to make heads or tails of the New Orleans team total play. On the one hand, my initial thought would be that inside the Southland so far, you've scored 76 and 84 in 2 games, one against Houston Christian, one against Incarnate Word, both played on your home floor. However, I don't know that that's enough to get me to over 74.5 on the road against a team that's just as good, if not better, probably a little bit better, Rio Grande Valley. That being said, I like the schedule strength that New Orleans played. You could almost call this their conference play. You could almost call a step down in class for them, which when you're stepping down in class and you have a set of numbers, side in total, that is based on season results so far, you can find a little bit of value there, which would lead me toward maybe over 74.5. It's an interesting game. The other side as well. The other side, I think the total was 79.5. In fact, I'm looking right now, 79.5. That may be a tick too high. I'm not sure, but I can't find a real good reason, Garth. You could tell that I make kind of a counterpoint toward this New Orleans side. I don't think there's a huge advantage here with them in any facet of the game other than they want to push, and Rio Grande is, they're fairly quick themselves. They're not ultra fast, but they're fairly quick. They'll go, especially at home. I think they would go up and down. So to me, it's probably a no play. Wouldn't be surprised at either result. Don't want to talk you off of anything, but just something where I can't find a decisive edge on that New Orleans team total at that price.
Yeah, Bayou makes a really good point. They have not, New Orleans has not played since the 13th of December. You're going to actually find there's a couple of teams. Hawaii is another one that comes to mind that are going to have massive layoffs over the holiday break. New Orleans is another one. They've gone, that's 16 days, I believe, between games. It's just not ideal, in my opinion. That's not something that you see. So some teams are going to fall into it, but like, man, when you start to get more than like 8-9 days between games, right, like you have to think that they probably had like substantial time off. Who knows? Maybe even some of them got to go back home or something for holiday break. You have 16 days. My guess is like you got some time off. You talk about a team like New Orleans getting that break too. I mean, this is a team that played road games at TCU, LSU, Tulane, Pepperdine. They went out west, played Pepperdine and Fresno. Mississippi State, went to Lubbock and played Texas Tech, up to Memphis. Some of those are right in their area, but still a lot of road games. Houston before that long layoff, if you will, was another one. So again, they've had a ton of travel, get some time off. Like, do they come out flat? I guess is the question that you have to ask yourself. UTRGV, they can, I mean, if they're hitting their threes, they're going to be tough to beat, especially on their home floor. That's kind of like the thing that they've done the best this year, right? Like 7th in the country, Rob, in 3-point shooting percentage, 40.4%. I had UTRGV in a spot a couple weeks ago, and it looked like they were going to run Texas Arlington out of the gym. They came out in the second half, just straight up could not hit a shot. But to speak to that matchup, UT Arlington's pretty scrappy, pretty good defensive team. I'm not sure New Orleans is that. So because we're getting late in the show, Rob, I'm going to make this my parlay leg. I'm really upset with myself for not just like firing when this was 3.5, which it wasn't for very long. Who knows? Maybe it'll come back throughout the day. Right now, you can get 5. You can get Rio Grande Valley -5 most places. I'm looking. Yeah, if you have FanDuel, there's a 4.5 there, but that's a 4.5 -120, which is essentially 5 -110. So like that's what I'm going to use for the parlay. UTRGV -5. I just think like the layoff, 16 days off, and then to have to sort of restart your season and do it on the road in conference in what is likely one of the more difficult like trips you have to make in the Southland. My Texas geography is not great, but I'm pretty sure Edinburgh, Texas is like down near the Mexico border, like on the other side of the state. Someone could correct me on that, but point is tough road trip. UTRGV typically pretty good at home. 7th in the country shooting the 3. If New Orleans is even a little bit flat here, they're down 10. So I'm going to lay it. I'll take the Vaqueros -5. That'll be my parlay leg. And with 10 minutes left, do you have an idea of where you want to go for the parlay?
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm pretty sure of where I want to go. And we'll stay on the theme of team totals that was just brought up to us by Garth. But I had one, Adam, that stood out to me. I thought was, I guess I would say extreme value. But Bethune-Cookman's going to play Oklahoma State tonight. Oklahoma State's number is a relatively low 91.5 for this game. Bethune-Cookman has just been on one of those ridiculously tough schedules like we talk about with Texas Southern or any SWAC school all the time. But Cookman already has given up 100-plus points to teams in the exact same wheelhouse as Oklahoma State or just upper-tier teams. For instance, 101 to Miami on the road, Miami, quicker pace, known for offense. 100 at Indiana, allowed by Bethune-Cookman. Of course, Indiana, good offensive team this year, but again, under a new head coach that doesn't necessarily want to go extremely fast. So 100 given up there is ridiculous. 112 to St. Louis, which plays at rapid style pace like Oklahoma. 107 to Arizona, which is one of the nation's best teams. Oklahoma State has gone over 91.5 6 times already this season. And here's the key for me. And I talk about these numbers quite a bit. How long is your offensive possession length? How long is the other side's defensive possession length? In the case of Bethune-Cookman, they allow shots very, very quickly. Number 56 in the nation, 56 fastest. Oklahoma State wants to do nothing but go fast. They release the ball as quick as anybody in the country. Their average possession length is 40th in the nation. You're going to get a zillion possessions. You're going to get a Bethune-Cookman team that has been put through the ringer. I mean, just this recent rash of road games played by Cookman, like I say, is kind of ridiculous when you've been at Missouri, at St. Louis, at Arizona. Now you're going to be at Oklahoma State. I just don't see how. Bethune-Cookman has to just be worn out at this point in time from playing this type of team. 91.5 seems too small. I think they probably get into the 95 plus range here. So I'm going to use Oklahoma State team total over 91.5 as my half of the parlay.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a tremendous beat on this Oklahoma State team all year. Listen, if it's Oklahoma State related, you should listen to Rob. I feel like you've come on this show, and every time we've talked about Oklahoma State, you've been right about what the outcome is going to be. There was even times that I feel like I was on the other side and you were still right. So it's like, for me, like I'm not going to push back on your Oklahoma State assessment. I feel like that's a team that you've had nailed this year. One thing I'll point out from the Bethune-Cookman side that we've kind of touched on over the last couple of weeks. This is a team. So the SWAC doesn't do the early league play like a lot of these other conferences do. And the main reason for that is all of these SWAC teams for the most part are out on the road collecting the paycheck in November and December. They're going in, they're taking their beatings. They're getting their buy game checks from Auburn, from Miami, from Dayton. Those are the teams Bethune-Cookman has played. Indiana, Missouri, St. Louis, Arizona. Like, Bethune-Cookman's got to be like, F this. We really have to go to Stillwater. Like, we finally get to, they've got to be so focused on that home game on Saturday. Like, that's got to be such a big deal to them to be starting conference play on Saturday. The only thing that matters to these SWAC schools, that this has got to be more than a nuisance than anything. I'm sure Bethune-Cookman is so sick of playing these types of games. They probably can't wait to have a home game against Florida A&M, which matters, which counts on Saturday, that I could absolutely see them just going to Stillwater and getting blasted here and not even really caring, right? Just okay, whatever. Let's be done with this. Let's get to conference play. So, Rob, I'm with you. What is that team total again for the people?
91.5.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 91.5 points. This feels like a triple-digit scoreboard outing for Oklahoma State. It feels like they can name the score in a game like this, at least their score. So I don't know about the spread, but it feels like if they want to score 100, they can score 100 here, which would be lovely for the team total.
It's actually funny that it could be more of a look ahead for Bethune-Cookman than it is for Oklahoma State, who opens Big 12 season with Texas Tech on the road on Saturday. So, I in total agreement that, enough is enough. But, Texas Southern does the same thing. They just take these lumps every single. And then when conference play comes around, Texas Southern generally is there. So maybe this is the Reggie Theus logic for Saturday.
Yeah. We'll see. And it's also just the reality of college basketball at this point. Yep. Listen, if you want, we're going to get one more game before we sign off, but I will say this: there's a great full court special for both of us on our page. If you're looking for more games, that's the way to get them. WagerTalk.com. Check out our page. We each have the full court package during the week. On the weekend, we put one up that's all of our plays. You get a ton of info. I'm putting full analysis out with every play. Rob's giving you analysis on totals. We bet very differently, so it's a great way to do the joint one. Or if you're like, hey, Trig is colder than the Northeast right now, then go with Rob, but take advantage of that special that's on the page. And if you're we're going to cover a lot more games on the WagerTalk site than we can get to in depth in an hour on this show. But we'll wrap it up. I know Garth loves to talk about Western Kentucky. I believe he's a Western Kentucky alum. But I got my guy Bayou in the chat saying he likes Jacksonville State tonight. And Rob, I come on and kind of joke with you on the show because I don't do a ton of total. I never bet totals. Maybe that's what I should be doing because I feel like I come on here, talk about totals, they do well. I think that's more luck than anything. I think that's small sample size. If I was just great at totals, I'd be betting them. But the reason I bring that up is Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State. The side is tough here. I'm not going to go against Bayou. If he likes Jacksonville State, I'll roll with him there. But this feels like it could be a struggle. That Jacksonville State offense kind of disjointed. And then Western Kentucky sort of lives at the rim, but you can't live at the rim against Jacksonville State. That's one thing they do well is defend. So I believe this total got bet up, and I my notes, which I probably should organize better, I had written down disagree. No, I'm sorry. That was a different game. This one's still 144.5, hasn't moved, but I kind of lean toward the under here. I think offense might be a struggle, especially being on the road with Western Kentucky. If they can't get to the rim and they're suddenly forced to shoot jumpers, I think that's a bad recipe for the toppers. And maybe that's why Jacksonville State is a play for Bayou tonight. But either way, I like the under. How are you seeing this one? Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State.
I would probably lean the Western Kentucky side. And I would look at their team total. Now, again, I got to preface this by saying that I didn't bet the game. So these are just opinions on my part of what I think would happen here. I think Western Kentucky is always live as a team total overplay for me, no matter who the opponent. Just love the way they push pace and you get extra possessions, et cetera, et cetera. Adam, I'm going to switch this really, really quick just because I want to jam these two Missouri Valley Conference games in
let's
here
go
real
there.
Quick. Real quick, Belmont, Indiana State tonight, huge game. My affection for Belmont. Obviously, when I'm not involved financially, I'm rooting for Belmont at every corner. They're 2-0 in conference play already. Indiana State's 0-2 already. Belmont's 2 conference wins were close. They weren't blowouts like what we saw against Irvine the other night. And a 2-0 team in conference against an 0-2 home underdog, that profile kind of screams Indiana State plus points. Whether they get it done or not, I'm not sure, but I think that's an interesting one. Then the other one, of course, Southern Illinois and Murray State should be an absolute barn burner. My first inclination was to take 6.5 with Southern Illinois, but I don't know that I want to get in front of Murray State right now. They've been so good this season. This total has been steamed from 164 to like 168 at this point in time. So money really expecting a lot of points to be scored there. But the Missouri Valley Conference, for what it's worth, I just think it needs mentioning that those 2 games are absolutely worth watching tonight. And if I had my choice of the 2, I think I would probably look towards Indiana State's just in a desperate situation here. And their losses are not bad losses. I think they lost triple overtime to Bradley. No shame in a triple overtime loss. So they've been close once out of the 2 games. Belmont's wins have been really close. Maybe the points are a little too excessive there.
And it's funny you bring those two up. If I had my choice of those 2, I had Southern Illinois, Murray State over written down with question marks. Going back to something you said, Murray State's offense has been incredible, but I do think there's some path to scoring for some points there to Southern Illinois. But yeah, I have no interest in stepping in front of Murray State right now, but I could see it if I could see there being some points in that game. The only way Southern Illinois hangs around in that game is if they can score a little bit. So I just think that for me, it would be the over in that game. It's funny you brought that up because that was the only 2 totals I had jotted down was under in Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, over in Southern Illinois, Murray State. So a couple rapid fire ones at the end there. And then for the crowd that says we don't give out picks on the show, we always do a parlay. So we're actually going to always leave you with something. In this case, my leg, UT, Rio Grande Valley, -5. And Rob is going to go with Oklahoma State team total over 91.5. Ever since we dropped it down to 2-teamers, we've been hitting these. I believe up over 4 units now on the season. This is another one right in that plus 260 range. Just straight up both minus 110. So we'll go with that for today. See if we can cash another parlay. If you're looking for more, head on over to WagerTalk.com. Both of us will have plays up today. There's great specials for college basketball and for All Access, the best one being that All Access special that I believe is going to run through the end of the year. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like and subscribe. Chime in the comments below on the Wager Talk YouTube replay. And we will see you guys back here tomorrow, 10 a.m. for more Full Court Press.